Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we're in Psalm 77. This is yet another psalm of Asaph, and this one is going to deal with the mindset of being in trouble and remembering who God is. Because sometimes it's when we are in trouble and when there's things that are going on in our lives and problems that we're having that we find it the hardest to remember who it is that's really in control and who it is that is there to help us. Let's see how Asaph speaks of it in Psalm 77. Beginning in verse 1, we read, I cried out to God with my voice, to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble I sought the Lord. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained and my spirit was overwhelmed. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I meditate within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. Will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? Has his promise failed forevermore? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his tender mercies? And I said, This is my anguish, but I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the peoples. You have with your arm redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph. The waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you, they were afraid. The depths also trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies sent out a sound. Your arrows also flashed about. The voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind. The lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was in the sea, your path in the great waters, and your footsteps were not known. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. As you look at Psalm 77, Asaph writes a psalm about being in trouble. Now, exactly what the trouble is, we're not entirely sure. Some think that the last paragraph, where it talks about the thunder and the lightning and the storms and the rain coming and all of these different things, may indicate that this was a time of drought that was going on at this particular time, and that Asaph is then speaking of the rain coming in the response of God. That may or may not be the case. It may simply be that Asaph is talking about the responses of God, and the fact that God's responses are like those kinds of things. Whichever the case might be, you're dealing with a time of great anguish and great trouble. And because of that, you see in the confines of this psalm this anguish being brought out in several ways, and there are in ways that we still see today and that we still experience today. And so as you drop back into verses 4 and following, he talks about in the first few verses about how that he's worried about things, he's troubled about things, but then in verse 4, he says, You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. You have the picture here of someone who can't sleep at night. And yet at the same time, they're so worried about things that they can't even talk about it. It's too troublesome to even try to communicate what's going on in their head. And all of the questions start flowing out, beginning in verse number 7. Will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? And so on and so forth. And really the question is, does God still care? Does God still listen? Is God done answering me? There are many people who, when they're dealing with the anguish that goes with the troubles of their lives, they ask that particular question. Is God still listening? Does he even care? And that's going to be the question that Asaph is going to ask here. But it's also going to be the question that he's going to seek to answer over the next few verses, because he says, Then I said, verse 10, this is my anguish. These are my concerns, my worries. These are the fears that I have, that all of a sudden I'm going to ask God for help and he's not going to be there anymore. But the reality is very different. The reality is that we have the God who does wonders. And so he says, I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. And then down in verse 14, you are the God who does wonders. In the midst of our troubles and in the midst of our anguish, we sometimes wonder, is God still there? And yet all it takes is being mindful enough to remember, number one, what God has done for us before. But number two, what God has given to us in Scripture, the promises that he has made, and the way that he has interacted with man in the past, to realize that, yes, he is still there. And he is still listening. And as we've talked about so many times in our studies of Psalms, it doesn't mean everything is going to be taken care of on our timetable right at the moment when we want it to and in just the way that we want it to. But it doesn't mean that God is not listening, that God does not hear, and that God will not respond. But instead, eventually, the rains will come. The storms will roll in, and God's answer and God's response will be seen. These are the things that I see in Psalm 77. I hope that they're beneficial to you, and I hope they've helped you to understand the psalm. Next time, we'll come back and we'll look at Psalm 78. Thank you for viewing the video today. I hope that you'll come back and join us next time. But until then, have a great day.